The rediscovery of the joy of life, reflecting on the search for meaning and peace in the modern world, begins with the reality that life is limited and transitory. This fact is the most fundamental realization emphasized by ancient sages, philosophers, and artists throughout human history. This awareness is captured by the Latin expression memento mori, meaning remember death. However, this concept does not emphasize a pessimistic end, but rather the value of living in a mortal world. The question of how to increase the joy of life and derive more pleasure from this restricted time frame is not merely a matter of philosophical curiosity, but also a struggle for survival and existential fulfillment. Most of the basic elements required to cultivate the joy of life, such as family, work, health, or friendship, already exist in many people's lives. Yet, certain structural and psychological obstacles of modern life hinder the transformation of this potential into tangible happiness. At the forefront of these obstacles is a mindset dominated by productivity. The modern individual tends to build their life entirely upon rational necessities and concrete outputs. In psychological literature, this is defined as instrumental rationality, the belief that every step taken must provide a benefit, serve a purpose, or offer a material or social contribution. Even choosing a hobby based on the thought of, can I monetize this tomorrow? Or will this provide me with a professional network? Can eventually transform a person into a robotic system that only produces output. Planning every action like a mathematical formula focused on efficiency is the greatest factor overshadowing the joy of life. Yet, the human soul is not designed merely to function like a mechanical clock, but to feel. Activities that may seem unnecessary, such as taking long walks, listening to the sound of rain, or engaging in sincere, even seemingly nonsensical, conversations with friends for no particular gain, are the primary fuels that nourish the joy of life. The true taste of life is hidden in those small moments that are not productive in a pragmatic sense. In the fragrance of a flower, in the warmth of the sun after winter, or in the rising steam of a morning coffee. Therefore, life should be structured not only with obligations, but also with activities done simply because they feel good, even if they serve no practical purpose. Incorporating an hour into your weekly schedule under the heading of doing nothing or just for pleasure, where there is no expected output, is a significant practical suggestion. During this time, you should focus only on your immediate desires and remind yourself that you do not have to produce anything. Another critical way to keep the joy of life alive is to step away from the illusion of being special and embrace the power of ordinariness. Modern culture imposes upon every individual the idea that they are extraordinary and deserve the very best of everything. While every human is indeed unique, when this feeling turns into a narcissistic delusion, a person begins to see themselves as exempt from the laws of nature and the natural flow of life. This illusion creates a destructive anger in the face of even the slightest mishap, manifesting as, why did this happen to me? I didn't deserve this. The solution lies in realizing that we are a part of nature, no different from a tree, a cloud, or an ant in the soil. Just as a lightning strike on a tree is part of the natural system, losses, disappointments, and injustices in human life are laws of nature. No matter how good we are, we may sometimes be neglected, treated unfairly, or experience disappointment. Accepting these situations as a cycle of the world and a part of existence may not bring absolute joy, but it provides a profound sense of acceptance and a quiet peace that follows. An individual who accepts their ordinariness lifts the weight of the world off their shoulders. The joy of life is not a static state, but an active process of discovery. Exploring one's living space and being hungry for experiences directly nourishes the joy of life. The billions of neurons in our brains are activated by new experiences, making the individual feel truly alive in that moment. Although being hungry is sometimes confused with greed today, the hunger referred to here is a curiosity toward life. One should not fear trying new things in different fields, making mistakes, or failing. Many attempts may end in failure or fade away. However, the more experiences are diversified, the the more clearly an individual discovers what they are good at, what they love, and what nourishes their soul. Leading a static and risk-averse life may seem safe, but this safety eventually turns into a spiritual prison. Evaluating the different possibilities life offers enriches both the mind and the soul, keeping the joy of life alive. For example, the excitement felt by an adult learning to knit from the internet at the age of 60 just to make small figures for their children can produce more joy than a major business success, because the hunger for learning and creating is at play. Our perspective on the concept of success plays a decisive role in our joy of life. The vertical progress model imposed particularly by Western-centric cultures aims for always having more, reaching a higher title, and constant growth. For instance, the owner of a small and peaceful business, who immediately opens new branches and takes on a massive burden of stress just because they were successful, is a result of this ambition for vertical progress. In contrast, horizontal expansion is a much healthier model for increasing the joy of life. Horizontal expansion involves deepening the current situation, mastering a talent, strengthening existing relationships, and focusing on quality rather than quantity. By aiming for maturity instead of growth, and for higher quality instead of higher numbers, the individual gains the chance to enjoy the place and the moment they are in. Choosing the deeper over the more is one of the most vital mental transformations needed by the modern human. Humans are social beings by nature, and healthy relationships are an indispensable part of the joy of life. However, while the modern world glorifies individualism, it has also made people into disposable objects. The tendency to quickly remove people from one's life over the slightest mistake or disappointment may provide protection in the short term, but brings chronic loneliness in the long run. Loneliness is one of the greatest voids that drains the joy of life. Facing the reality that there is no such thing as a perfect human is a critical step. Unless a person's mistake turns into systematic psychological violence or severe harm, overlooking certain flaws, showing tolerance, and trying to mend relationships strengthens bonds. What increases the joy of life is not finding perfect people, but the shared memories with people we love despite their flaws. If every day is an exact replica of the previous one, this cycle eventually creates a sense of being the living dead, leading to weariness and a lack of enthusiasm. Our brains love habits because they save energy, but our souls need novelty. Radical and major changes are not necessary to break a routine. Commuting to work via a different route, trying a food you have never tasted before, or even picking up a small new hobby is enough to change the dopamine balance in our brains and refresh the joy of life. Furthermore, the joy of life is not solely a mental process. It also has a physical counterpart. Focusing only on mental activities and thoughts can create a sense of fatigue that accumulates in the mind like toxic waste. Moving the body, exercising, or sweating physically is the most effective way to release this accumulated stress. Physical exertion, such as walking, running, or weightlifting, pulls the individual away from the regrets of the past and the anxieties of the future, focusing them on the now. The vitality and energy felt after exercise allow us to see the colors of the world more brightly. Finally, it is necessary to accept that life does not consist only of materialistic values. Over the last century, humanity has largely neglected spirituality and the search for meaning. However, the more meaningful we feel our lives are, the more we enjoy them. This spirituality does not necessarily have to have a religious structure. It includes any search for meaning that connects the individual to something greater than themselves, such as nature, art, service to humanity, or a sublime value. Finding a purpose greater than just getting through the day, making money, or surviving provides a person with deep existential satisfaction. This sense of meaning is the strongest support that keeps us standing during difficult times. It should be remembered that the joy of life is not a state of being in great excitement or explosive joy at every moment. The joy of life is a serene peace, the pleasure found in the aroma of a cup of coffee, a silent gratitude for being able to wake up in the morning, and the courage to say, I am here and I am alive, despite all the chaos of life.